Meghan Markle stood up mid-interview, ripped off her mic, and accused Stephen Colbert of silencing her on live TV. What really happened that night, and why did security have to step in? You might be curious that what happens when a former royal walks onto late-night television expecting praise, but ends up facing the one thing she didn't prepare for: accountability. Tonight, we're diving into the interview that turned from polished PR to public disaster when Meghan Markle, confident and composed, sat across from Stephen Colbert, only to storm off his set in front of a live audience. This wasn't your typical celebrity sit-down. What started as a friendly chat about empowerment and reinvention spiraled into one of the most intense, unfiltered confrontations in Colbert's hosting career. The smiles didn't last long, neither did the pre-approved talking points. What made Meghan snap? What question pushed her over the edge? And why did the audience go from clapping politely to holding their breath in complete silence? You're about to see a side of both Meghan and Stephen that never made it to the headlines, and it ends with a walk-off no one saw coming. Before we get into the full story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Should celebrities be protected from tough questions, or is it time they started answering them? Let's break down what really happened inside Studio 58 that night. It was supposed to be a routine PR stop, a chance for Meghan Markle to charm the late-night crowd, promote her newest media venture, and maybe squeeze in a few viral sound bites about empowerment and healing. The cameras were rolling, the lights perfectly dimmed. Studio 58 was buzzing with anticipation. Meghan had arrived precisely on schedule, flanked by 2 assistants and her personal publicist. Her outfit? A flawless beige pantsuit that whispered elegance but screamed control. Every strand of hair, every swipe of lip gloss calculated for the lens. She was there to promote her latest project, a sleek Spotify-style podcast series centered around reclaiming identity and rewriting personal narratives. Meghan's team had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to curate this appearance. They had sent over a detailed list of pre-approved topics. No mention of the royal family, no questions about staffing controversies, and absolutely no diving into unsubstantiated rumors that might derail the message. Stephen Colbert, ever the consummate professional, welcomed her with his signature grin and gentlemanly charm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to thunderous applause, "joining us tonight is an advocate, an author, a mother, and a media powerhouse, Meghan Markle." She walked onto the stage with confident grace, waving to the audience and offering Colbert a perfectly practiced smile. The crowd stood, clapping enthusiastically. Meghan took her seat, legs crossed, posture perfect, and yet something felt off. Stephen leaned back in his chair a little too casually. His cards, normally tucked neatly in hand, rested idly on the desk. And behind that welcoming smile was a glint, subtle but sharp, not malice, but intent. Meghan didn't notice at first. She was too focused on her talking points, too rehearsed, too used to friendly territory. What she didn't realize, what her team hadn't predicted, was that Colbert had no intention of sticking to the script. Behind the scenes, producers had debated whether to challenge Meghan on topics that had become almost taboo in celebrity interviews. Stephen had made the final call just moments before airtime. "We're going in." And from that moment on, the tone of the interview would never be the same. "Let's talk about this new chapter," Stephen said with a smile, his voice warm and casual. "You've built a brand that champions truth, healing, and the power of storytelling. That's impressive." Meghan's face lit up instantly. This was familiar territory, safe, inviting, affirming. She leaned in slightly, her voice silky smooth. "Thank you, Stephen. I've always believed that stories can heal. And for women especially, owning your narrative is a revolutionary act." The audience applauded lightly, clearly on her side. Meghan was in her element, now polished, passionate, and perfectly practiced. She spoke about her podcast series, about lifting marginalized voices, and about creating space for authenticity in a world built on performance. Stephen nodded along, letting her build the foundation. But then, the shift. "Authenticity," he repeated slowly, almost tasting the word. "That's interesting, because you've talked a lot about being your true self in the public eye. But do you think the public always sees that same version of you?" The question was soft in delivery, but sharp in implication. Meghan blinked. There was a half-second pause, barely noticeable, but enough to register on the faces of a few sharp-eyed producers watching from the control room. "I'm not sure what you mean by that," she said, tilting her head slightly. Stephen's smile didn't change, but his posture did. He leaned forward, fingers laced. "Well," he said carefully, "some people have pointed out contradictions between the way you present yourself publicly and how certain former colleagues or insiders describe their experiences working with you." The audience stilled. Gone were the gentle vibes from moments ago. Meghan's expression tightened, but only slightly. A master of media control, she kept her voice even. "Stephen, I think we both know how the press can distort things. My focus has always been on the positive, on service, on elevating others. I can't spend energy chasing every tabloid headline or defending myself against every unfounded rumor. She offered a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Stephen didn't argue, not yet. But there was something in the air now, a shift, a spark waiting to catch. He placed one hand on his desk, slowly lifting a note card that hadn't been part of the approved list. And that's when Meghan realized this wasn't the interview she'd agreed to. Stephen tapped his note card gently against the desk, the sound barely audible, yet somehow louder than anything else in the room. The smile on his face had faded just a hair, and the shift in energy was undeniable. "Meghan," he began, his tone still controlled but now carrying a different weight. "You've spoken a lot about your journey, your struggles with the royal institution, the pressures of public life, and the importance of authenticity, especially for women of color in media." Meghan nodded slowly, prepared to give another soundbite about resilience. But Stephen wasn't done. He continued, "But I'd like to ask you something a little more difficult, something I think many viewers have wondered about." The audience quieted, sensing the turn. Stephen glanced at his notes, though everyone could tell he already knew the question by heart. "There have been reports, and not just from tabloids, about your time, both on the set of your earlier projects and within the royal household. Former staff members have alleged that working under you was challenging. Some even used the word toxic." Meghan's expression froze. She blinked once, then again slower this time. Her polished media smile faltered, replaced by something tighter, more strained. "I'm surprised you're bringing that up, Stephen," she said, her voice calm but noticeably cooler. "I came here tonight to talk about my new series, and the work I'm doing to uplift voices that often go unheard." Stephen nodded slightly, "And we will. But these stories, these allegations, they've been widely reported. Some of them come from people who worked closely with you for years, not anonymous sources. Don't you think that warrants some kind of reflection or response?" There it was, the moment the interview pivoted from platform to pressure. Meghan sat up straighter in her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I have always treated my team with respect," she said firmly. "What you're referencing are recycled narratives from people who were never comfortable with a woman like me in a position of influence. It's unfortunate that those stories are given more weight than the actual work I do." Her tone was defensive, and the warmth that had filled the studio just minutes ago had evaporated. Stephen didn't flinch. "I understand that media can be unfair," he replied, "but when multiple individuals from different periods, production crews, palisades, former assistants, all echo the same concerns, does that suggest there might be a pattern worth addressing?" The studio audience was now dead silent. No nervous laughter, no polite claps, just the sound of tension building, second by second. Meghan looked at Stephen, eyes narrowing. She was weighing her words, or perhaps deciding whether to continue at all. What had begun as a conversation was now a chess match, and Meghan Markle was officially on the defensive. She wasn't walking off yet, but everyone in the room could feel it coming. Meghan shifted in her chair, her back straight but her breathing just a little heavier now. The stage lights, once flattering, now seemed too bright, exposing every twitch of discomfort, every flicker of unease. "I agreed to do this show," she said, her voice calm but sharp at the edges, "because I was under the impression that we would be discussing meaningful work, not rehashing the same tired gossip that tabloids have used to smear me for years." Stephen didn't flinch. "I respect your work," he replied, "and I have no interest in tabloid nonsense. But when multiple independent sources, not tabloids, but people who worked alongside you, speak about difficult working conditions and strained relationships, that's not gossip, that's journalism." The audience remained silent, watching the scene unfold like a car inching toward a cliff's edge. Meghan's lips parted in disbelief. "Are you seriously calling this journalism? You've blindsided me, Stephen. You knew these topics were off limits." "I never agreed to avoid truth," Stephen responded gently but firmly. "And I certainly didn't agree to silence important questions because they're uncomfortable." Meghan stood up suddenly, her chair sliding back with a sharp screech. The sound echoed through the studio like a warning shot. "This is an ambush," she snapped, eyes flashing. "You're using your platform to humiliate me. Is that what this show is about now? Shaming women who speak their truth?" Stephen held his hands up slightly, not in defense, but in calm. "Meghan, this isn't about shaming anyone. It's about balance. You speak about authenticity, about being real. I'm simply giving you the opportunity to address what's been said, to respond in your own words." She began to pace slowly behind the chair, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her voice rose just slightly, tinged with emotion. "You think you're being fair, but you're just like the rest of them. You smile to my face and twist the knife the moment I let my guard down." The control room was frozen. Camera operators exchanged glances. The director kept the feed rolling, unwilling to miss a second. "Meghan," Stephen said softly, "we can move on. We can talk about your podcast, your advocacy, anything you'd like. But if you want to clear the air, this is your moment." She paused mid-pace, locking eyes with him. "No," she said, her voice lower now, more dangerous. "We don't get to move on. Not after that. You've already made your intentions clear. This isn't a conversation. It's a setup." Her tone was laced with fury, not the performative kind, but the raw, unfiltered kind that cracked through even the most polished exterior. The smile was gone, the media training forgotten. Meghan wasn't just defending her brand anymore. She was fighting for control, and in that moment it was clear. The interview had officially gone off the rails. Meghan's heels clicked sharply against the studio floor as she paced, arms crossed, jaw set in a tight line. The tension in the room had turned suffocating. No laughs, no shifting seats, not even a cough from the crowd. Then she stopped. Whirling around, she faced Stephen directly, eyes blazing. "You know what this is, Stephen? You're not asking questions, you're pushing a narrative. You are part of the problem." Stephen looked up at her calmly, expression unreadable. "I'm asking what viewers are already thinking. Nothing more, nothing less." "No," she snapped, voice rising. "What you're doing is feeding the same machine that's tried to silence me since the moment I spoke up. You pretend to care about women, about truth, but when a woman dares to speak her truth, you try to control it. You twist it." She turned to the audience, raising her voice for all to hear. "Everyone watching, remember this moment, because this right here is what silencing looks like in real time. A man in power using his platform to tear down a woman who refused to play by his rules." The audience didn't know how to react. Some looked uncomfortable, others stunned. One woman near the front actually lowered her eyes, as if not wanting to be part of it. Stephen remained seated, but a small signal in his earpiece made him shift. Behind the cameras, his producer gave a subtle nod. A security staffer quietly stepped toward the edge of the set, just out of frame. "Meghan," Stephen said slowly, "I think maybe we should take a break. Emotions are clearly high." "Don't you dare patronize me," she snapped, finger pointing now. "You pushed this. You wanted this moment. Well, now you've got it." The security staffer stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we need to clear the stage." "I'm not going anywhere," Meghan hissed. "Not until I've said my piece." She turned back to the audience, her voice trembling now with righteous fury. "This is why women especially, women like me struggle to be heard. Because no matter what we build, what we survive, people like him think they can reduce us to headlines." "Ma'am," security tried again. "I said I'm not going anywhere until I finish." But even she could see the moment slipping. The audience, once curious, then shocked, was now just uncomfortable. Stephen stood slowly, his voice steady. "This isn't helping either of us. You can leave with dignity, or we'll have to end it here." Meghan stared him down, chest rising and falling rapidly. Then finally she grabbed her mic pack, ripped it off, and turned to leave. "History will remember this," she said coldly over her shoulder. And with that she strode off stage, her heels echoing through the dead silence of Studio 58. No applause, no laughter, just a stunned audience, and a host left behind at his desk, still staring at the door. And just like that, the stage was empty. Meghan Markle, former Duchess, activist, media powerhouse, had walked off the set of The Late Show in one of the most dramatic exits ever seen on late-night television. No farewell wave, no handshake, just a trail of tension and silence so thick, it could have been cut with a knife. Stephen Colbert remained behind his desk, visibly rattled but composed. After a long pause, he turned to his stunned audience and offered a weary smile. "Well, folks, that certainly wasn't what we had planned for tonight." The audience let out a nervous chuckle, but the room was still coated in unease. The cameras faded to black. The interview was over, but the fallout was only beginning. Backstage, Meghan's team was in damage control mode. Some whispered that the segment would be pulled before airing. Others believed Meghan might release her own statement, one that painted her as a woman unfairly attacked for simply speaking her truth. Meanwhile, Colbert's producers were reviewing every frame, debating how much to air and how much to cut. One thing was clear, they had just captured a moment that would go viral around the world. And now, we turn to you. Was Meghan unfairly targeted? Did Stephen cross a line by pressing her on uncomfortable topics that weren't part of the agreed-upon interview? Or was this the first time someone actually asked her the questions others were too afraid or too polite to bring up? Some say Meghan's outburst was justified, a woman pushed to the edge, forced to defend herself in yet another high-pressure public forum. After all, who wouldn't crack under years of scrutiny, headlines, betrayals, and accusations? But others argue that Meghan's reaction revealed something deeper, a discomfort with being challenged. A refusal to be held accountable when the narrative doesn't go her way. Was this a meltdown, or just the mask slipping? As for Stephen Colbert, was he brave or reckless? Some viewers praised him for treating Meghan the same way he would treat any public figure, with respect, but also with honest questions. Others accused him of sensationalism, of sacrificing professionalism for ratings and controversy. The truth might lie somewhere in the middle. What we witnessed wasn't just an interview. It was a cultural clash between curated celebrity branding and old-school journalistic accountability, between the desire to tell your story and the reality of facing everyone else's version too. And in the middle of it all, two powerful voices, both trying to steer the conversation, neither willing to back down. So now we ask you, was Meghan Markle the victim of a late-night takedown, ambushed and disrespected on national television? Or did Stephen Colbert simply do what few have dared ask real questions and not apologize for it? Whatever your opinion, one thing is certain: this was a moment that shattered the polished surface of celebrity media and revealed just how messy the truth can be when it's finally dragged into the light. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Was Meghan justified, or did she go too far? Was Stephen out of line, or just doing his job? And if you want more celebrity moments that go completely off the rails, subscribe to Starscoop, where the spotlight doesn't lie and the truth always finds its way to center stage.